so good luck to us all. We are talking today about parenting in a new era, right? And it's something that we can all talk about, just about the dynamics of being a working parent in a hybrid remote environment, which is really the new normal, if you will. I'm Belissa Savery, Senior Director at the Mom Project, and I am joined by these two brilliant minds. Like I said, we just cannot stop talking and having this conversation. Michael Perry, owner and founder of Maple, CEO and founder rather, and we have Holly Corbett, who is a Forbes contributor and VP of content at Consciously Unbiased. Show of hands, where are my parents?
All right.
Look around, y'all. You might be working for a parent, your colleague could be a parent. This is why it's so important that we have this conversation today and that we continue to talk about it, because we don't know what we're doing yet, right? Organizations don't know what they're doing just yet. So we are super, super psyched to be here. So I got to tell you, as a mom of two boys, I can really appreciate this conversation because my second was born into that cohort of COVID babies. And so I never returned to work. And I had always been on site. I didn't know what a remote world was. And so it was super challenging for me. I remember those challenging moments. Were there moments that felt great, right? Because I got to spend more time with my baby, yes. But returning to work and still being home, I don't know about you guys, but it felt a little off, right? I didn't know what I was doing just yet. It was challenging for the organization. It still is for many, and we'll hear more about that here. Shortly thereafter, I joined the Mom Project, which, needless to say, a little empathetic towards parents, right? We're all about connecting women with companies who really want to accelerate female participation in the workforce, right? So I was fortunate enough to have the Mom Project there, and so the work that we're doing collectively is just incredibly important. And so we're going to learn more about what Consciously Unbiased, as well as Maple, what we're doing in this space to continue to have this conversation and continue to talk to organizations about the policies that really need to be implemented so that we all succeed and thrive in what is this new era. So without further ado, Michael, Holly, let's kick it off. Introduction on just the amazing work that you're doing in this space. And also, just for the sake of a good icebreaker, what are you binging? And if you're not a binger, what's the podcast? You gotta be doing one of those two, I'm assuming.
After you.
So again, I'm Holly Corbett, VP of Content and Consciously Unbiased. We are an organization that advances inclusion and belonging in the workplace. We do that a number of different ways, but we really focus on company training. For example, one of the trainings we offer is a diverse hiring certification to really de-bias the hiring process. And then I also am a Forbes contributor, and over the last couple of years, a lot of my reporting has covered the pandemic impact of working parents, the motherhood penalty, and the gender and racial wage gap. And so, okay, binging, I'm not a big TV watcher, but I did start watching The Handmaid's Tale, which definitely does not help me sleep at night.
You went from not watching TV to going really dark.
I went right into it. But I do love podcasts. I'm addicted to podcasts. So my favorite one right now is Elise Loenin's Pulling the Thread. So she covers everything from spirituality to wellness to mental health.
Nice.
Good one.
My name is Michael Perry. I'm the CEO and founder of Maple. In my last life, I was very much focused on helping entrepreneurs kind of compete with any company. And I decided to leave that world when I became a father and became a parent, and really realized how much every household really suffers from inequality of the work at home. And I recognized that I was not being nearly a good enough father or husband to my partner and children. And searching for a technology solution while I was at my previous job, realized that this world had somehow forgotten about parents, and building a platform to allow for better collaboration at home, better planning, better ways of asynchronously working in real time with the complications of trying to manage a career and manage a family. And so we launched a product a year ago. We have 50,000 plus families who are using our product today. We just actually recently launched what we think is the first product to help solve for the mental load of home, of planning for the birthday parties, planning for summer camp, planning for Disneyland. with our very first browser experience designed for the home. So quite proud of what we've done. I feel very embarrassed right now, and I have a feeling that some people live or watching that, I have to be honest, I don't listen to podcasts really, and I don't really watch TV, but I have, to comfort myself with parenting while working, started watching Naked and Afraid, because I feel like they may be the only people who have it harder than I have it in that moment. So I find a lot of therapy in Naked and Afraid.
That's incredibly interesting and unique.
Yeah. So please, no judgment. It's my coping mechanism, okay?
None at all. I'll just say this. I just watched stand-up by Hassan Minhaj on Netflix. It's hysterical. And ironically enough, when I went through IVF with my second, my husband and I geeked out because we saw him at NYU, and we're like, I wonder if he's going through the same process. And he sure did talk about it during the special. Anyway, check it out. It was really, really funny, and it hit home for me and my husband, so we laughed, we cried, it was really good. Mm-hmm. But let's jump right into this. So talking about this new era, how do we avoid blurring the lines between work life and personal life when they're inherently under the same roof? And what are some of those pros and cons? I'll throw it to you first, Holly.
Me? So I have a 7-year-old daughter, Athena, and a 9-year-old son, Blake, and I've been working remote 100% of the time since COVID happened 2.5 years ago. And, you know, there was definitely a learning curve, and I don't think there's any perfect solution to keep from never blurring those lines, because life happens. But very quickly, I think I realized that I had to create some structure around what mattered most to me, because if I didn't, I was never going to be spending time on things that were important to me. And I think that really led me to kind of sit down and reflect, like, what are my top values? Like, how am I spending my days? How is that matching my time? And so for me, my values were connecting with my children, doing meaningful work. And for me, that comes in the form of creating messaging that impacts positive social change, and then health and learning. So I kind of tried to break my days down into 4 buckets. And so luckily I work for a company, Consciously Unbiased, they value caregivers. So I changed my work schedule to be 8:15 to 4 every day. And that was the time when I focused on my work. That was when my kids were at school. And then I made a commitment to myself to do 20 minutes a day of exercise, which never happened, and I realized I had to just build it in. So when my kids got home from school, I did that 20 minutes. I let them have screen time, and then 4:30 to 8:30 is, you know, homework, dinner, bath, bed. And then at night was the time that I had to dedicate to learning, but really I was washing dishes and packing lunches, so that's where podcasts come into play. I listen to the news on podcasts, I listened to Audible books, and I downloaded the Masterclass app last year, which I started using. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one.
So just to add a little bit to that, if I may, I think part of the problem with where we're at right now is that for basically the entirety of humankind, we have built a system which forces one person to go out and quote unquote hunt and one person to stay home and care for the tribe. And that system has kind of scaled over time. And what I think we can think about life in a pre-COVID and post-COVID world, and over the last 40 years, as more and more women have entered the workforce and in most cases become the predominant breadwinner, they've been trying to make it work under this system, right? And so I guarantee you, if you ask most fathers, their answer is going to be very different from Holly's in terms of their time distribution. And so the problem with today's world is that we have to start preparing ourselves that trying to cram the old system into a work from home system is going to be catastrophic for women. And the reason why it's going to be catastrophic is that in the old system, there's still this expectation that mom is the predominant caregiver. Right? And so if you take the predominant caregiver and you actually don't create separation, physical separation between a physical place to go to work and a physical place to live, I think that we have to start preparing ourselves that you're going to have a lot of unhappy people. And maybe quietly there already is a lot of unhappy people. And so the benefit, I hope, of the shift to work from home is that we get all the upside of not having to commute, having to spend time with our kids, are getting to spend time with our kids. I shouldn't say have to, get to spend time with our kids. But maybe most importantly, it's created this great fork in the road where we can take a look back and say, we are reinventing where we work. Maybe we can also take a break and reinvent how we live. And I think that if we don't actually have those honest conversations, I think it's going to be quite sad, to be honest.
It's so interesting to connect the two perspectives because, Holly, you had it down packed and you were just like, at 4 o'clock, I go off and I do this and I changed my schedule. And that's what moms do, right? We are used to just coming in and taking care of what we have to take care of. And for you, Michael, the perspective of saying, I have to reassess, I have to be a better dad, I have to be a better husband. I mean, you created an entire company, right? After these beliefs. So it's just, I wonder how many women just took on the responsibility of saying, well, now that I'm home, I'm just going to do more instead of I'm going to distribute this. Super interesting perspective and incredibly excited that you've created this app.
Yeah, I mean, we see it in the data, right? So like, we still know that mom is even when you have participation, mom is still the CEO of the home. And so I think that if actually people took a step back and said that I'm not going to treat my wife or my husband as life partners, but if it was a business partnership, if we were co-founders, this company would fail, right? If you actually just took one step back, my wife and I look at ourselves as co-founders to life, and our products are our children, and the health of our home is critical. We've gone through, like, I think the last 10 years, over-indexed talking about a healthy culture at the office.
Right.
How much time have we taken as a society to take a step back and say, but our home culture is more important than our office culture? It is more important than our office. And so I think that this is an incredibly exciting time to really reshape the lens of how we come together as people, and more importantly, how we come together as households. Sorry to jump in.
Yeah, no, that was great.
To that end, then it's time for us to kind of have that, come to Jesus moment where we talk to ourselves about the changes that we need to make. But can we talk about the policies that should probably start to take place within organizations, right? It's not just us saying, well, we value our family more. It's organizations also realizing that and putting policies into place. Can we speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we don't have affordable childcare. We don't have a national paid leave. What we do have is a motherhood penalty and a gender and racial wage gap, and that needs to change. And these are systemic issues that require policy changes. Also, I think that this is really a value issue where we're taught to value women's time less. So at home, still, the majority of women shoulder the household responsibilities. That's unpaid labor. At work, women are still, in 96% of occupations, paid less than men for the time that they spend in the workplace. And so I think this is really signaling that we need to change what we value. At the same time, so I interviewed Eve Rotsky, the author of Fair Play. I highly recommend this book and her program. It's all about what Michael was just talking about how we have to systematize our homes. Because if we don't, then women will burn out. And she said that, our personal lives are public issues. So we may feel like we're doing this alone, we're struggling alone, but you're part of a larger system. And all that to say, at the time that we're waiting for policy change to catch up or our partners to catch up, I think we have to be our own revolution because when people individually have their own revolutions, it creates a collective change. And we saw that with the Great Resignation. We saw that with workers trying to create their own boundaries. And when workplaces didn't accommodate their boundaries, they were willing to leave. And Women in the Workplace report 2022 just dropped yesterday. They're dubbing this called the Great Breakup, which is how women leaders are leaving in record numbers right now. Record numbers. So we're losing half of our talent pool because there just aren't the types of accommodations that we need. So, just to kind of go back to what I was talking about, how I had to set up my own system, I think to be your own revolution, that sounds like a lot, but I think there are some places to start. I would say first, Again, go back to your values. While you're waiting for policy change to catch up, you know, something's got to give. So go back to your values and try to spend your time, more of your time where you can, in line with those values. And that may mean, you know, the bathroom doesn't get cleaned this week, and that's okay, because you're focusing on something that's more important to you. I would also say that it's really important to have a community and be able to ask for help. You know, have those tough conversations with your partner. And if you're a single parent, I think you have to establish connections and look for a community to give you that support. I do not think that one person should be responsible for raising another human being. We used to live in villages. We used to have communities that were intergenerational, and more of those responsibilities fell on a community of people. So I think there are ways that we can create this. For example, if you're a single parent, maybe you can partner with other parents so that you don't have to do the school pickup every day, but you can take turns, carpooling. I know, like at one point, my husband travels 40% of the time, and at one point I had a big job interview. I had a newborn and a toddler, and I was able to call my friend down the street to watch my kids while I took the interview. So there was things like that that we can do. And I would also say, ask for what you need at work. Managers are not being trained on how to support working parents. The Same Women in the Workplace report found that I think less than half of managers are trained on how to prevent burnout, how to create equitable pathways to promotion. So they don't know what you want. If you need a flexible working schedule, if you need more money, I think we have to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we have a male in the room, it's such a different perspective. I mean, as I said before, you created a company behind this. How do we just start to have that conversations with just managers? I don't need to talk to the CEO about implementing policies today, but I do need to have some serious conversations with my manager that go beyond me saying, well, I can't make that call because I have to pick up my son. How do I have a broader conversation that says, this is bigger than just making an appointment. This is the flexibility that I need in my life so that I'm more productive, so that you can retain me as an employee. How do we have those conversations?
Well, first, I want to just acknowledge and thank the men that attended this talk.
Yes.
If you look around, there's 99% of the people in this room are women, so that's problem A.
Yeah.
Right? So very rarely in life is someone willing to address or fix a problem that does not affect them. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. Right? So if all the people in power are white men, then all the other lack of equality issues won't be solved. And so I speak to this from a place that there was a time where I was a man, not a father, in a position of leadership, and I was sympathetic to how the family comes first. I wasn't empathetic of what it feels like to stand in your kitchen at the end of the day and cry from exhaustion. I wasn't able to be empathetic with being awake all night with a crying child. I wasn't able to be empathetic about missing something. So everyone in this room has missed an event with their children. Mm-hmm. You don't get that back.
Yeah.
I've told my team at Maple, and I'll say this publicly all day long, their children are more important than the success of this company. Period. I will not be at their deathbed. I will not expect them to be at my deathbed. Right. But their children will be there. And so I think that the problem is that we're not speaking to this at a human level. There's something to be said about kindness.
Right.
Right? And so I think that the start of the conversation for the men in the room, and I'm going to specifically speak to the men in the room who don't get it, is that it's not a form of weakness to be vulnerable and express that someone is struggling. Right? And it's not make you a great leader to crank more hours out of people out of the day. And so I think that the problem is that we first need to shape empathy and equality in our home, which does not exist. We then need to shape empathy and equality in our workplace, which does not exist. And then we need to have a change of leadership to shape empathy and equality in this country that does not exist. That's the path.
Does not exist. Unfortunately, right? That is our reality today. But we are all on this panel doing
Absolutely.
incredible work to move that forward and move that conversation forward. I'm going to jump into our next question, but I do want to hear from the audience. So if you do have any questions, please submit them. I think there's a code to scan on Pigeonhole. Let's talk about a few years from now, right? Because this is all really new to us. The reality is that the pandemic happened and many organizations believed they were going back to normal at some point, and that didn't happen. And because they had this belief for such a long time, they never thought to implement the policies that they lack today. What does it look like, and this is for both of you, I'd love your perspective, what does it look like 5 years from now?
Well, I wanted to mention the ideal worker norm, or the idea that work is the top priority. Like you were saying, work shouldn't be the top priority. It's this idea that workers are expected to always be on and always be present. And I think 5 years from now, companies will understand that that way of working isn't good for companies, because that leads to workplaces where their teams are burned out and they're not engaged. So hopefully 5 years from now, people are able to choose how they work and when and where they work, and that performance is judged on results and not on where you are.
At what time?
At what time.
I think what's actually really important to address, so I absolutely support and believe everything that she just said, but there's, the biggest problem is that we're gonna see over the next 5 years is that knowledge workers are gonna get extreme benefits of this progressive thinking, right? Service workers will not. That's a problem in itself, because that's gonna create huge disparity in the experiences of growing up in certain households. And that's a problem that we need to solve for in a different way. I think that the way that I see things at Maple, and I can only speak to my own company, is that we have something right now called family flexibility, and that means putting your family first. And we have a block of time which we ask that you stay available for work. So right now that's 9:30 PST to about 1 p.m. PST. And that means that you can schedule meetings, and there's an expectation that there's availability to participate in the conversation at work, right? Outside of those blocks of time, your family needs to be the priority as long as it does not affect performance of your job, right? So if you need to take your kids to school, there's no questions asked. You want to sign off at 3 o'clock to feed your children dinner, no questions asked. You want to take a Friday off, no questions asked. As long as what we are striving for as a team, the output, the collective output as a team is being met.
Right.
And I think that if companies can just make the mental model shift that sitting in your desk is not a KPI, right? You can sit in a desk and rot and sit on Facebook all day, or maybe for these younger kids, sit on, whatever they're using, TikTok all day. I'm old, clearly. I said
here.
Facebook, everyone's like, fuck, he's old. That's not a KPI.
Right.
Talk to me about how we're going to change the home together. Talk to me about what you did this week, about what we're doing to move forward equality in the home together. Do not talk to me about how many hours you worked at Maple this week, because that's moot to me.
I love that, Michael, because the difference is I block off my calendar in the morning for drop-off, and then I say, you can schedule meetings from 3:45 to 4:30 when my kids are coming home, so approach with caution. But it's interesting that you, as the founder and CEO, have implemented that. And I think that gives us the confidence, right, to block those hours as well, because my boss told me to. But let's jump into some questions. Would love to elaborate on the difference between sympathy, empathy of managers and leaders that are parents versus non-parents, and how to navigate. We kind of touched on this a little bit.
We did.
Did you want to add anything else?
I can add to that. I think being sympathetic is acknowledging something. Being empathetic is feeling something. You do not, if you have never had children, you do not know how stressful it is to be up with your kid with a 104-degree temperature and then expect to show up to work the next day and be normal. My wife and I have 2 sons, both by way of IVF. We've had miscarriages in the process of that journey. I went to work the next day. That's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And unless you've had a miscarriage, unless you've had to hold on to your partner, unless you've felt that pain, you do not know what that feels like in your home. Period. End of discussion. No questions asked. And so we can't expect people to empathize with experiences that they have not experienced. It's not possible, right? But the more that we can drift towards empathy, the more that we can become lead by kindness and lead by relatability, because we can put ourselves in that position. Right? And there's a reality, and I hate to say it, and I'm trying to change my own life and my own way of thinking because I've benefited from the system, that if you're a man, the system is designed to be easier for you. Right. And so how can you be empathetic to a harder situation that you as a man aren't experiencing? And so we have an obligation to our children at the end of the day, and the future women of this world at the end of the day, to buck up against that way of thinking.
I'm 100.
You got me a little, Michael.
I know. I 100% agree with you. I also think that if we're talking about managers, parents versus non-parents, what the types of changes that we're asking for benefits everybody.
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
allowing people to have lives outside of work, not making work their only priority, it makes it better for everybody, whether you're a parent, not a parent, you want to have hobbies outside of work. I think it's really important.
If I could just add one last thing, I'm super sorry
Go for
to
it.
consume the clock. I'm
Just
sorry.
don't make me cry again.
Okay. There's also a super easy hack, and I don't want to hear anyone say it's not possible, because I've worked at a publicly traded company. Everyone that's an executive gets executive coach. We have diversity and cultural teams. The problem is that the world has thought about diversity by gender or color, right? And we can do a better job creating panels and teams and cabinets and coaching so that we aren't discriminating against people who don't have children, but that we're helping giving them the tools to manage people that do. Mm-hmm. And that's an investment at a company level. So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I won't argue that. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this question. How would you navigate a situation where you're interviewing for a potential dream job that doesn't offer the work from home option that you would want or need? Do you walk away? Will companies adjust?
I'd say ask. Just ask. And if you want or need it, I think you have to, if that's a non-negotiable, you think you kind of have to walk away. I think we will be seeing companies losing their top talent if they're not willing or able to create these environments that work for everybody.
I mean, flexibility is the future. This would be my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. It's probably not worth much, but never lose sight that they're interviewing you, but you're interviewing them. You are interviewing them. Do they deserve for your time away from your family and your attention and your mental capacity away from everybody else to show up and be the best version of yourself for them? And so if they don't give you the answers you like to hear, there's a lot of great companies out there that will. I firmly believe that you should walk away. The same way you shouldn't hope that somebody changes in a relationship. You're marrying who they are.
Right.
They're not going to change tomorrow.
It's not your dream job.
And that's not your dream man. So just keep on stepping, right? So that's just what it is.
I think we have time for one more. Let's see. What are some steps that an individual can take in a large company to enact change to help themselves or others that are overwhelmed with trying to manage work and kids? And I actually think we did cover that a little bit, right? So let me see this next one. Michael, how do you encourage men to want to recognize the problem of inequality between men and women at home and in the workplace? And I'm just going to add that the campaign for Maple, when he started the company, was, it's not the 1950s, it's 50-50. Freaking brilliant, right? Go.
At Adweek, brilliant. I love that. I hope my team's hearing that. Honestly, I think that there's a reality that not every person wants to change systematic racism. Not every person wants to change the homophobia in America. Not every person is going to want to change the issues that are not plaguing them. But I think that when I became a father, what I realized was that I would not want anyone to treat my children the way I've treated some people. Period. I own my faults. I'm a sinner just like everybody else. I've done things and said things that I'm not proud of. And I couldn't imagine somebody doing those things to my kids. And now I have a niece, God bless her, my sweet little Perry. And I could not imagine her having to deal with the bullshit that you all deal with in this room. And if I have to work and fight and crawl, and I encourage every man to do the same thing, because there's a woman in your life that needs you too. There's a woman coming down the line that needs you too. There's a woman after that woman that needs you too. We all have to try. When you know that the platform is set up for you, we have to try to fight for equality. Whether it's race, gender, doesn't matter.
Absolutely. It's a new era. Really ask for what it is that you want. It is not your dream job if it's not remote. If your family can't come forward and first, and your employers don't understand that, and I get it, not everybody has the luxury of saying I quit, but just know that there are resources out here trying to make that change, trying to create that opportunity for parents to succeed and thrive, and we can do it. Thank you so much for joining us. We're a little bit over.
Thank you.